Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video, we will be doing a deep dive into Obsidian. If you're not familiar with Obsidian, it is a desktop application for creating your second brain. Primarily, it uses markdown files, and those files are stored on your computer. We'll be looking at some of the advanced techniques for this, how you can link your notes together, how you can embed content, how you can link to certain blocks of your notes. We'll be covering some of the outlining techniques that are really powerful. So if you want to get your ideas down into your notes and you want to reorganize those will be really useful. We'll be looking at templating. So if you want to build some kind of consistency around how you structure your notes, and we'll look at the Zettelkasten way of using that in the templates. We'll be looking at the tagging system, at how you can maximize your organization with tagging, which is away from the folder structure, to rethink about how you interpret, how you process your notes. We'll be looking at some workflow using the tagging system. And then finally, if you are a software developer learning and you want to record your notes, there's a great tip here of how you can embed running examples of what you're learning inside your notes, so that when you're reviewing those, when you're writing some software and you want to recall that information, you've got that right at your fingertips. So without further ado, we're going to dive straight into Obsidian and see how all this works. So here is the outline of what we're going to cover. We'll jump into Obsidian and we'll take it from here. So first of all, we're going to cover embedding the contents of another note in Obsidian. So this is quite interesting. So here's Obsidian, and I've got an example note called the Zettelkasten method, and I've linked 3 notes into here. And over on the side, I've got a preview of what that looks like. So if I just were to command click into this, I would be able to view the contents of this. It's just a very quick overview. I like the permanent note Zettelkasten way where the information is really lightweight. I can now link to this. If I want to talk about Zettelkasten in a project, I can link to this note and get an understanding of what it means very quickly. So the way to preview that here in Obsidian is you take your link and you just put an exclamation mark in front, and you'll see on the right hand side I have now embedded it in here, and I can do that for all 3 of these now, which is pretty cool. So now if you want to build like study cards or compose things together, you can just compose this all together, view it in that mode, and now you get a nice preview. The exclamation mark, I believe, comes from when you're embedding images in Markdown, so it's more of a Markdown notation. So the exclamation mark, I believe, like signifies it as a visual impact rather than just being like a metadata or a link or something like that. So I believe the way to images is you put an exclamation mark in front of a Markdown link, and then that will embed the image in your Markdown. So they've followed a similar concept here for that. So that is how you preview the contents of some notes in other notes. So let's move on. So you can link to individual blocks within a note. So again, you can preview them beforehand, but now we've got this notation of is it a caret symbol, which allows you to essentially put blocks together. So let's say I have information on permanent notes, and I want to, let's say if I go into here and I now have a section called examples of permanent notes, and then put some examples in here. So now if I wanted to link to this section, I can put a caret here and put just like an ID. If I don't put the ID, there are ways to automatically generate that when you link to it. So if I want to put like a preview, and then now this is a link. Actually, I won't preview that. This is just a link to that section where if I go permanent notes and now I use that caret symbol, I now get the option to select things. So that examples link there. Actually, it's not done what I thought it would do. It's actually picked up the content below. Let's just move that there and see what. Well, actually, let's see what. I'm not sure why it's done that. Actually, that was not expected. But if I click that doesn't go anywhere. But if I just type it, I believe now when I click there, it links to this here. So you'll notice that this is what's highlighted. And I guess your mental model around this is you're putting a little up arrow to say this thing here pointing up to it is what I want to call examples. And for example, if I put examples of literature notes, if I don't here is an example. So if I just didn't put that ID in, and then I wanted to do the same under literature notes, I would do the double square brackets, literature notes, this time put the caret. Now if I wanted to put link to that block there, see, it puts the ID in automatically and it appends it in there. So I think the reason why it picked up the wrong thing in the other example is because I didn't put some spacing around it or something like that. Now you might be thinking, well, that's kind of cool. Could I put in my document here, could I put a preview of that? So that's the link there. If I put an exclamation mark, what it does is it pulls in the title, but hold on, I wanted to preview the contents of that as well. So it doesn't do that. All this is a reference to that line. So you don't get all the content in that block, but there is a way to do it if you've got headings. I don't know where that hash came in. Sorry, that hash shouldn't have been there. But if I put a hash, and now I can link to that section, and it pulls out the content of it as well. So again, I can go in here, and I could say an example of a permanent note can include like references, concrete conclusions, whatever examples be. So now you can see that I can embed that block in here. So if you do find yourself where you've got quite long form notes and you want to just pull out a section and reference that, what you do is you can use the hash and then link to the title of that section. If you just want to create a link to a specific line, then use the caret, which is the up arrow, and give it a name, or use the auto-generated name, and that's fine. Okay, that is how you link to individual blocks. Now we move on to folding. What is folding? So this is where it allows you to collapse content. So for example, you may create larger maps of content, like a table of contents or something, with what we call progressive disclosure, which means it's all collapsed and you just progressively disclose, open up what you want to view. You could possibly use it for like a Q&A style notes where you don't want to reveal the answer. So if you're creating study notes and you want to test yourself, you could collapse down the answer and then expand it. Now you don't get this by default, you have to enable it in the settings. So let's jump over and jump into settings. Under the editor, we have, do apologize, we do have a set of options called folding. So fold heading and fold indent. So you can create lists and then fold the contents of the list. So let's create an example. Let's say I want to create a book outline. And let's pick a topic. Let's say we want to talk about entrepreneurship. And let's say, here's my outline. Let's do some, we'll do a bullet point list. So introduction, we might have choosing your business idea, and then you can indent that. You can say market research, interviews. Then you might have, say, building a minimum viable product. I can't tell if I've spelled that correctly. Then you say choosing a tech stack. You might say getting early feedback, lean startup, homepage, something along these lines. So you might be creating an outline for something, and now you can collapse these down using these little arrows that allows you to just hide some of that content. You can collapse down entire blocks. And again, the ellipsis at the end here is just a short way of showing there's more content, expand it out. Let's do a test. Let's see what happens if I close that file and reopen the file. It keeps them collapsed. And therefore, you can create some study notes, collapse them when you're not using it, and then reopen it up if you want to test yourself. So that is what folding is. And you can do that in both the preview mode and the edit mode. Okay, let's move on to multiple cursors. Actually, this is jumping out of order. I didn't mean to put in this order. Let's say I wanted to indent all these things or outdent them. I can hold the Alt or Option key, and it turns to a plus. And now I can, so let's say I wanted to put some text in here, chapter, like I could do that. And I can edit multiple things at once. Good tip is you can highlight using, I'm using Command and Shift to select individual or up to the end of the line. And it's really good if there's, say, a block of text that you want to edit in one big go and it's quite repetitive. Great if you're into programming and you're trying to format, say, comments or data or things like that. It's a really powerful way to just do lots of things in one go without having to keep swapping between the keyboard and mouse, Okay, that is multiple cursors. Now, indenting and outdenting. I've sort of alluded to this. Let's say I want to tab that in, indent, and Shift and Tab, outdent. And this is a good way, again, if you're creating an outline of ideas, you might say ideas, and then note-taking ideas, and then you might say methods of note-taking, and then I'm pressing Shift-Tab to outdent. And if you highlight text, you can indent and outdent blocks. So I can take that block, Shift and Tab, Tab. Again, if you're into programming, this is a very standard way of editing blocks of code, but it's great. You can use that in your note-taking way. And again, like if you were documenting code, for example, so you put something like 3 back ticks. So I'm doing some TypeScript, and I want to do like an interface book, and you put like title string, author string. This is where it's really handy to be able to outdent, indent, those kind of things. And the cool thing is when you say what language you're using, you get the code highlighting. So there's a little bonus tip in there if you're into that side of things. Okay, that's how indenting and outdenting works. Swapping lines quickly in Obsidian. This one's really interesting. So we can enable it, and then we can add a hotkey for this. So, well, actually it is just a hotkey. So let's say I wanted to reorganize a priority list. So let's create a new note, task list. And I might say like daily tasks. And then let's create, well, I could just use a markdown notation here, say, let's say morning routine, meditation. Let's say I want to 10 minutes of reading, go for a walk, let's and then journaling, J-O-U-R, I can't spell journal, J-O-U-R-N-A-L, something along those lines. Right, let's say I've got a list of things here, and then maybe I could just put an X in there. Let's see what that looks like if I preview it. Oh, that it doesn't look anything particular. If I was using the Bear app, that would have converted to checkboxes, which is kind of cool. So let's say we've got this, but now I just want to rejig the order of this in my note taking. How would I do that? So I go into the settings, and under hotkeys are all these interesting things that you could optimize. And the swap line down and swap line up. And I quite like the idea of customizing that If I want to shift it down, I press the Alt or Option key down. And if I want to shift it up, the Alt or Option key up. As far as I can tell, those hotkeys don't do anything in any other context. So now I can press Alt down and I can reorder my priority list. So let's say I do my reading at the end of the day. I'll do a journal in the morning, a meditation, and then go for a walk. And then I might have other daily activities. If you're outlining, say, a book, for example, my book outline, I can say, actually, we want to talk about that first, or this needs to go in its own section. So bring it up and Shift and Tab, and now I brought it as a top level section. So you can see how you can quickly just organize your ideas and move them around really quickly. The goal here is that your tools become an extension of your method, so there's not a cognitive overhead to be blocked by having to figure out how to get it working in the tool and get into a state of flow. So that is how you swap lines quickly in Obsidian. Now we want to do templates. So templates are really good if you want to streamline your workflow. They're just a set of templates, templated markdown files, and it can give you a standard framework to use. I would use this in a context of, say, if I want to create a study note, a permanent note, maybe a journal entry. If I'm doing some software development, maybe a user story, or even a thing called a story brand, which is kind of cool, where you think of a project and you say, well, who's the hero? What challenge are they overcoming? So if you're writing a blog post, you can do a story brand to make sure that you pay attention to the narrative and actually design your articles in the way that you want it to be told. So how would we do this? Let's move back into Obsidian. So what we do here, we create a folder, and we're going to call this templates. So that's now saved. It'll be saved on our file system, and we'll use this. Let's say we want to create a study note. Actually, no, I'll call it a study note. So let's say I want to study something. I want it to have a title. So there are 3 variables you can use, and use the double curly brackets, opening and closing. This is kind of a standard way of representing dynamic data. So if you're using other programming languages which have templating support, some will use this notation. I could say when it was created. So put a date and time. So those are the 3 variables that you can use. And with a study note, I might say see also, and I might say references. So where have I got this from? And I could just template a little placeholder where I put a numbered list of what I want to put in here. And that's a template there. So now when I create one of these, I can tell it to create a study note. Let's say, actually, I want to add something else. I'm going to put status, and I'll put to do, and I'll cover using hashtags for status in a moment. Then let's say I want to create a reference. So again, title, but maybe I want to prefix this with reference. Then maybe I'll have a source, and this could then be a link to somewhere where I'll just put a numbered list. Because I don't know what it would be. Well, again, we'll put created date and time, and then source. Oh, I've already got source. What do I want to say? Like link could be a web link, something that we put after that. Okay, and then finally we'll just create one more. We'll call this. Let's say doing some software development, you want to create a user story. So again, title, and we'll say type story, or feature. So I'm thinking of a software development. We use some kind of tagging to say what are my features, status, backlog. Generally, if you're adding something for the first time, it might be on your backlog. And then you could say as a whoever, I want so that. So user story follows a notation. As a customer, I want to browse a product so that I can buy it. Or as a writer, I want a note-taking app that has internal links so that I can create connected thought, something like that. That's a sort of a standard way of doing things. And the cool thing is when you put these angle brackets here, it sort of creates a block quote for that. So it pulls it out. And then we'll put a placeholder here, description of the story. Right, so we've created 3 templates. Now let's dive in and we'll enable in the editor settings. There's an option. I'm going to lose my place with this. Maybe it's a core plugin. Maybe I can search. I can't search. Templates. There we go. So I enable the templates, and what that does is it creates a plugin option down here called templates. And now I can say what folder it is, and it'll give me some suggestions. And I want to use my templates folder that I've created. If I want to modify the date and time formatting, I can do that. And there's some references. So rather than having year, MMDD, there'll be a way to insert maybe March 12th, for example. Okay, now let's see it in action. Let's say I've got I create a new thing. I will call this, what do we have? We've got reference study notes. Let's say I want to study the Zettel. Let's say I'm studying a book, How to Take Smart Notes. Great book that covers a deep dive into the Zettelkasten method. Now, what this has given me is just an empty note, but now on the left-hand side, that plugin has enabled this little copy symbol, which is essentially your template. Hit insert, and because I've got more than one, I get to choose what type of template. I can say this is a study note, and now what it does is it creates how to take smart notes taken from the title up here. This is when I created it. Here's my status to do, and I might then have the Amazon reference. I might have other references, and then I can make my notes in here. I could create a new note. So let's say I wanted to create a user story if I'm doing a bit of software development. Templating feature. So let's say I'm working on a templating feature, create a user story. As a writer, I want a template so that I can create notes quickly and with a standard set of content. Something along those. I put a description in there. And again, I can preview that, and that now comes out in a nice block quote there. So that's how you can use templating. Use your imagination, go creative, create a workflow. If you're using other techniques like the story brand, if you look that up, it has a whole kind of workflow around that, which is really good if you're planning out projects and you want to pull out the prompt for completing things in here. Okay, that's templating. Tagging in Obsidian. So we've kind of alluded to this. The way I think of tagging is you can create things like feature, note types. You can also create status. And if I just open up this sidebar here, we can now use this to expose the tagging. So again, we'll go into the settings of the editor. I'm just now wondering if this is a plugin rather than, I think it's a plugin, not a setting. If I go here, we have a tag pane. Let's enable that. So now I get a little hash up here in the tag pane. If I click that, I can see backlog, feature, to do. So everything that I've tagged has an entry here. But one thing that's really useful is I could create a grouping of those. So type, feature, status, backlog. I'm just now going to click through and clean up the ones where I haven't done that from. And you notice it'll give a suggestion as you start typing. Oh, that's status backlog. And now I can collapse those. This to do here, let's just put that as status and status. Can't spell status. Let's just fix that so it looks clean it, S-E-A-T. Okay, so now I have a nice little system where I can look at all my features and they come up here. That's the search string that it generates. And I can look at things like my backlog and my to-dos very quickly. So if you want to build some workflow, maybe you've got some notes which you've partially worked on, you just want to create a little bit of status around that. You can use the tagging, use the slash notation so that you get the groups here. Another thing you can use for that is to create themes around your content. So one of the things with Obsidian is that ultimately these files are on your file system, and you might be tempted to organize things in very rigid folder structures, which is fine if that works for you. I tend not to like that, because how do you know what file, what folder a particular note goes in? Let's say I'm talking about knowledge management as a folder and note taking as a folder, and then suddenly you realize, is Zettelkasten, is that knowledge management, is it note taking? So I like to keep things quite shallow, just stick them in. But what I can do is I can use the tagging here to create some themes, and I could say like a theme or hashtag note taking, create multiple ones, theme Zettelkasten. So now I can create a top level view of these things that I want to index into. So what have I got on note taking? What have I got on Zettelkasten? And it's quite freeform. I don't have to tie that now into my folder structure. I can have that very freeform and build up a map of how to create entry points into my note-taking system. So ultimately that's tagging. You need to enable the plugin for that pane to appear, and then you can use it for status. You can break it into folders, and yeah, you have to enable it. And then finally, how to embed CodePen into Obsidian. So not really just CodePen, but let's say you're learning how to program and you want your notes to be rich and have examples of what to do. So let's say you're looking at you're looking on the web and you find this link here, and it's a CodePen, so it's a working example. So what you can do is you can, well, if I click this link here, so if I open that, so here's an example. It's just a simple React kind of clock, React framework, but there's an embed option. And lots of websites have an embed option. So Twitter, you can embed, I believe, things. Maybe even YouTube, you can embed YouTube's. And you can do the iframe option. So I'm just going to select all of this in this text box. I'm going to bring that into the clipboard. And we'll move over into Obsidian. And let's say coding example, how to create a clock in React, for example, or timer. And let's just paste it in. And create a title, example. And it doesn't look like it's doing much here, but when you put that in preview mode, it will load that. And now I can actually see that running. I can interact with it. I can see the HTML. I can see the code that's running. And I can build up real world examples if I'm looking at how to learn how to code. If it's got an embed option, generally you can then stick it into your note here, which is really powerful. We could try a YouTube example. So if I come up here, let's go to, I'll just find a video here, 1 second. I've not tested this, so I'm not actually sure if this will work, but we'll give it a go. So essentially I've got this video here. Sorry, let's stop that. And then I can go to share, embed. Let's see what happens. Copy the embed. Let's paste that in. Hit play, and now you can create embedded YouTube videos in here, which is quite good if you want to now take study notes of this video. You just want to be completely within here. What you would do is you would split the view vertically, run that in preview mode. Let's collapse that down. Now I can take my notes on this video and have that all tied together, which is kind of cool. So yeah, with the iframe embed, just copy the code, stick it in. You can do some pretty funky things with your notes to reference other content. Obviously, if that video went away, if what that's pointing to goes away, you lose that out of your notes. And it's a reference that you don't really persist for very long, but great for study notes where you just want to quickly capture things in, but probably not ideal to rely on it for longevity, essentially. So yeah, that pretty much concludes the working example of how to use Obsidian and some of the advanced features of Obsidian. So that was a deep dive into Obsidian. I hope those techniques will find you well in your note-taking journey and that they're things that can help you elevate yourself to that next level. Now, I just want to take a moment to talk about what I'm working on with this channel and with the app that I'm building. So there's no shame in this. I'm building my own note-taking app. I've used lots of different apps to try and organize my second brain, to take that knowledge that I'm getting from reading books, articles, YouTube videos, so much knowledge, but I felt like I was sort of slipping through my fingers. I couldn't recall it when I needed it. I discovered the Zettelkasten method last year. There's a great book called How to Take Smart Notes by, I think it's Sonke Ahrens. Once you get into that mindset of how you can take that knowledge, go through the process and distilling it down into something that's highly discoverable, highly reusable, you can create blog posts from it, you can create YouTube videos from it, you can teach others from it, and most importantly, you can deploy that knowledge in your own life. But I very quickly discovered that I lack consistency in doing anything. I can have the best app. I could have Obsidian, I could have Notion, I could have Roam Research, I could have them there. But unless I chip away 10 minutes a day and keep hyper-focused on building value in my note-taking, it's not going to happen. So I decided that actually there's no app that's going to help me do this. So I started the journey to create my own called Flowtelic. The idea is that you get into a state of flow, sense the flow of Flowtelic, and you have a autotelic experience, which means the act of learning, the act of writing, the act of discovering is the joy in itself. So this app is built mostly around the Zettelkasten method, but it won't be restricted to that, so that I can record my notes, build a habit, so that I can produce better blog posts and better YouTube videos and really see that transcend in the output and my thinking and being able to help other people along the way. And this app I'm building, obviously not just for myself, it is for others who are like me, who are an autodidact, someone who just loves to self-learn, who will pick up a book, who will read an article and recognizes that the information in a book is only as useful as how you build on that knowledge and how you organize your thoughts. And the Zettelkasten method really helps you with that, helps you do your thinking through your note-taking. It embodies the act of writing, being able to teach others, get feedback, evaluate your understanding and recognize that your understanding changes over time. So I wanted to build an app that really embodies that. Most other software that I've found either doesn't have the discipline around it or sort of encourages long form notes, which are really hard to get the information back out of. So if that is of interest to you, then make sure you like this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and most importantly, there's a link in the description where you can go to join.flowtelic.com. Just drop your email address in, join the mailing list, join the journey. Once you put your email in, you'll get instant access to the app while we're in private beta. It's completely free, local storage. You don't need to worry about any accounts or anything like that. Play with it. And check out the other videos on the channel where you can see how to get the most out of the app in its early stages. And yeah, leave a comment, and share your thoughts and what you'd like to see next. So I'm Martin, and thank you very much.